Hello and welcome to lesson 2 of the lower intermediate series lessons for tenor viol. I'd like to look at chapter 5 now on page 40 in Viol Player, book 2, and playing on the top string with the third and fourth finger. Some of which we've done already, but I just want to do this again because I'm going to add another dimension to this shortly. Okay, so if you look at number 1 then and play that, so bow on the string. And we talked about just sinking down, haven't we, and feeling the arm weight when you're playing on the top string, which is much harder to do on the top string than any other string. Okay, here we go. So number 1 then. Here we go. And 3, 4. Okay. Now, when you practice at home, it's a really good idea if you can put some of that on autopilot, and so some of that maybe with your eyes closed. Maybe not now, but try memorising just 2 bars or something, and seeing what's happening to your arm, and what's happening to your bow. Is it doing this, coming up around the string, or is it staying in the same place? And doing something like this slowly is a really good idea with your eyes closed. Okay, let's look at C major scale now. So right back from the C string, and let's just look at the position of our arm on the C string down here, to the difference between the arm here and the arm up here. It's enormous, isn't it? So it's really, really important that we feel the difference on that C string and that C string, and for each bow direction, i.e. each string, there's a very specific arm movement that works and keeps the bow parallel to the bridge. Let's do the C major scale now. So arco straight away, and you can immediately see that I've got my tunnel here for my bow because my fingers are coming up and round on my C string, and my bow might be slightly further away from yours. If you've got wound strings on your viol, I've got gut strings, so I'm just going to be further away from the bridge. Okay, here we go. 3, 4. There's quite a lot in that, isn't there? And it's not just holding the fingers down when you string cross, which is what you should be doing, of course. For example, this, playing an E, and then I'm not moving my hand. I've got my tunnel, so I'm not going to get my finger interfered with any of the other strings, but I'm leaving it down. Every time I string cross, my fingers stay, and the only thing that moves is my bow. So, there's one thing at a time. When you practice this, maybe just do the bottom octave, then do the top octave, and then put them together. Because in addition to keeping your fingers down, and I'm hoping that might be something that's starting to feel right in your left hand now, you're starting, well, I'm starting further away from the bridge, and you will be as well. But when we're on the top string, we want to be close to the bridge, don't we? That was a bit too close. But close enough so that the string, the very thin string, doesn't get bowed away from the bridge. Because it's amazing how quickly that sound deteriorates when we're not on the right place on the string. And there is that place that's going to be sweet. And it's not too close to the bridge because that's where the string is too tight. And it's not too far away from the bridge because that's where the string is too loose. And trying to do this on the whole length of the bow is something that we need to work at. Hence the little examples on page 40, trying to get your bow going in one direction all the time and not up and down the string. So with the C major scale, we've got to come from round here to down there, haven't we? All in one scale. Shall we try that again together? Okay, here we go. 3, 4. my bow, I'm not looking at my left hand. And if you're having to look at your left hand and think about it a little bit, then maybe do some pizzicato practice. And then when your left hand's a little bit more on autopilot, put the bow in and maybe look at the bow to see where you are in terms of distance from the bridge. And then when you're really happy, close your eyes and play it. Let's look at this arpeggio. Now we did this, let's do pizzicato. We did this pizzicato, we did the bottom octave, didn't we, in Viol Player Book 1. And we have a hand shape that finishes like this. Let me show you on the bottom octave. Because we were holding 3 down, 1 down and 2 down, so we ended up like that with the fingers. So now what we're going to do is go to the top octave and then pivot on the second finger. So you can release all your other fingers and put 1 across and then hold that and then 3 and 4 down. And we've had some octave Cs in the last piece. So that, oh, that doesn't sound particularly in tune. We've had some octave Cs, haven't we, in the last piece. So that's how your hand's going to look at the top of the arpeggio. So let's try this together. Here we go. So 1, 2, 3. So when I finished at the top there, I've still got my C down. Let's just try that. Let's try it again. Here we go. 2, 3. Pivot, hold, add 3 and 4 to the top C. Let's do that top octave again. So we go 2, 2, 3, 2, 1, open, 4. Let's try that again and think of the notes this time. So this is C, E, G, C. It's really easy when you play an arpeggio to go, oh yes, it's open 3, 1, 4, 2, whatever it is. And to just lose the sight of the notes completely. So why don't we do this and we'll say the notes as we go. Okay, all the way from the bottom to the top. Here we go, 2, 3. So C, E, G, C, E, G, C, G, E, C, G, E, C. And I've still got my C and my G down. It's quite easy to do it going up, isn't it? But it's much harder to say the notes when you come down. But I guess that's just orientating you as to the notes. So if we did it with the bow now, and just do it once and see if we can think about the notes as well as everything else. Okay, here we go. So you get ready? 2, 3. Yes, a huge amount of string crossing for the bow, isn't it? Going push, pull, up and down the viol, completely. Really good exercise. Okay, and you probably realise by now that when I play arpeggios, I like to do them 3 times, so here we go. 3 times. Ready? 2, 3. And of course, while you're doing that, you can think about your left hand, you can think about the notes, you can think about the fingers, contact with the frets, or you can think about the bow and obviously going across the string. But it's really easy to lose sight of your arm weight when you're doing that 3 times and string crossing quite so much. So maybe the 3rd time, think, right, okay, bow, arm weight. That's what I'm thinking about the 3rd time round. And all these things, all these techniques are making you be a better player. And hopefully more quickly, because you're thinking about this and you're thinking about that and it's all coming together. Now I want to look at La Bourbon, which is on the same page 41, as that C major scale in arpeggio. And this is a great piece for just getting across the viol and holding fingers down and just finding notes really from the top to the bottom of the viol quite quickly, hopefully. Okay, so I think one of the hardest things to find, to be honest though, is the E at the beginning of the second line, bar 3, because you have to hold your second finger down at the end of the previous bar and then reach across for E. Now, does that feel familiar? It should do, because that's what we've just been doing in our C major arpeggio. So in a way, you've already sort of done this, but I just wanted to point it out because that's the context. And of course, there are times where we're holding fingers down to find the next finger and measuring, like we have done before, measuring across the string to find the next finger without letting go of the previous finger. Okay, so this is my little joke, if you like, putting Forqueray in book 2, and this piece La Bouron is I think it's 2 and a bit bars of semiquavers of the piece from the second suite, but I thought it was such a good exercise. Anyway, let's play it. So here we go. I'll count to you. Ding 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 bom. Ding ding ding. If you give you 3, I'll count you in crotchets. So 1, 2, 3. So that was just the first playthrough, and we're not going to do it all the way through again. So don't worry if you didn't get to the end, but well done if you did get to the end. So let's break it down into 2-bar phrases, I think. Okay, here we go. So, and we're going to be watching out for that for the second bar when we're holding 4th finger down to find the C. And remember, fingers are going to be up, and you're still going to have your tunnel with your bow. Okay, so first line. Here we go, and 1, 2, 3. So the only jump there is from the E to the G, isn't it? That's a tricky one. But we can pivot onto there to make it easier for the second finger to jump. Let's just practice that. So we're going E to G, E to G, E to G. Now if we did the second bar, second beat, if I count you in 3, 1. Now if you took your second finger off, and we'll do that second beat, 3, 1. It's not secure, is it? Your second finger is helping your first finger pivot across the strings. Otherwise you're having to jump a long way and you don't actually know whether you'll find that G because it's such a long way away. So keeping your second finger there as a pivot can really help that. Okay, so first line again, just to get it bedded in, and 1, 2, 3. Finish like that, and that's how we're going to start. Okay, so get your C major arpeggio fingering ready. Here we go, and 3, 4. Okay, let's just do that bar together. Here we go, 3, 4. first finger down and we're coming back to it, aren't we, after that open string. I'm just giving you crotchet beats here. I know it should be 7/8, but or even 5/6, but just to keep the crotchets going. Right, let's do bar 4 now. Okay, here we go. I'll count you properly this time. And 5, 6. So that's another one where holding that F sharp down and only move it when you need to go to the B. Okay, and the last line, here we go. So 5, 6. So we've got that fourth finger in the bar A, haven't we? Putting 2, 3 and 4 down on 4, not 4 and 3, 2 and 3 popping up, or even 3 popping up. And obviously there's a limit to how quick you can do that pizzicato, but just finding those notes and seeing how they relate to each other across the viol is good. Okay, I want to look at page 50 now, and this is the principles that Forqueray talks about in his Principles of Bowing. I've put this in this book because I think it's just so important to look at historical sources to see what was being discussed at the time about viol technique. And this letter, or the content of this is a letter from Jean-Baptiste Forqueray to Prince Frederick Wilhelm of Prussia. And he's talking about the bow and what you can do with it, and he says it should express all the passions, and it is the bow that stirs the soul. And finally, it is the bow that gives character to the music. To this beautiful bow, I find there are 4 principles. And it's the 4th principle I just want to discuss in this lesson, or bring to your attention, because it involves playing loudly, and well, it involves playing with dynamics. Let me read you this 4th principle. So, it is the use of the second finger on the bow, that's the middle finger, he says, which is the prime means of expression. So it's the second finger tensioning the horsehair which gives off its expression, and which gives character to the music. For this, it is necessary that the bow is placed across the string. So the bow hair is placed across with the joint of the second finger, which is what we're doing here, and that it never leaves this position. And if you put your bow on the string and you feel that it's nice and secure because it's over the top, then that's brilliant. And of course the second finger is pushing the hair downwards. It's not towards you, it's downwards. So we've got that feeling of gravity, haven't we? Gravity is working with us. Then Forqueray says, the finger presses the hair against the string to make more or less sound. By pressing and relaxing imperceptibly, it makes the expression the loud or the soft. So if we press a lot, it's louder than if we press less. And above all, he says, one must observe, monsieur, that the bow thumb is placed lightly on the wood. If it is pressed too hard, it gives too much harshness to the performance and crushes the bow on the string. So what we're trying to do here is to keep a really relaxed thumb and a really relaxed first finger, and it's a dead giveaway if you grip with the thumb, because your thumbnail turns white. And if you grip with the first finger, you can see a line going across your first finger as well. So the position of the second finger on the hair is just so vitally important to enable you to feel relaxed. So let's go back to chapter 5 now, and let's look at this exercise on page 40, number 1. And just play this thinking about that second finger on the hair, and moving it down a little bit more to play loud and a little bit less to play less loud. So let's do number 1 and play it maybe as loud as we can. So push down on the hair. Here we go. 3, 4. slightly less, can you make it quieter? Let's try it. Here we go. 3, 4. Certainly works, doesn't it? So if you play loudly without thinking about putting your second finger on, okay, we can think about bow speed. But it's so easy when you're on the top string to play loudly and do this, isn't it? Just to stick the elbow out and almost like, right, I'm going to play loud, so I'm going to tense up. And actually what you need to do is completely relax your right arm and apply some second finger loudness. Let's try that together. So put the bow on string, sink down, heavy arm, lots of pressure with the second finger, and let's play as loud as we can. Here we go, and 3, 4. Similarly, we're going to look at the third finger and say, well, actually, if I want to take the weight of the bow with my third finger, I can play very quietly. Let's play the first one again and play it quietly, taking the weight of the bow with the third finger. So, in other words, taking the weight of the second finger. Here we go. 3, 4. So I've used less bow then. And of course it's so much easier, isn't it, to play quietly and feel relaxed because we're not having to put so much weight in it. But the weight comes from having a relaxed arm and more pressure with the second finger, as Forqueray says. Let's go now to the Italian ground on page 46. And I deliberately wanted to introduce this concept so that we can make this an interesting piece dynamically. It's a beautiful piece anyway, isn't it? But we're going to be looking at supporting the bow hair to play quietly and phrasing off where we need to, and we're going to be looking at applying a bit more pressure with that second finger. Okay, so let's do this phrase by phrase, and I think, you know, something like this where we've got a repeated bass, each strain, each 8-bar strain can have its own character, and if you think of your character of each strain before you play it, you can get into the character of each phrase right at the beginning. Okay, let's go from the beginning then. So, bow on the string, sink down. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Just look at each phrase at a time. So, if you start with too much pressure on the bow, it's really hard to get a good sound because the string, the bow hair is too tight and hard to start it. So don't start with too much pressure on the bow. Okay, so we're going to be getting the bow faster, aren't we, for the crescendo, and adding some second finger. And where we've got those two back bows in bar 4, what we don't want to happen is this, is to stop the bow on the string. And by supporting the bow with the tip of the third finger underneath the hair, we can let the string ring. It looks like the bow is staying on the string. It's still remaining in contact, but the weight has been taken by the third finger so that the string is able to vibrate. And that's how we get the sound of that note going on. If I do it without now, you can hear that it's stopped on the string, can't you? So we're going to be using these two fingers now in what I call a dynamic way, because we're using second finger to play loudly and third finger to play quietly. Let's have a look at this then. So, 1, 2, 3. So did you manage to get your crescendo going to the fourth note, that F? It's always tricky in threes, isn't it? Because we're going to go push, pull, push, pull, push. And we need to recover, otherwise we're going to get further and further down the bow. And that's always a problem with this sort of rhythm, isn't it? So we have to have times when we can work out our bowing so we don't get too far down. And that's exactly why those two back bows are there in bar 4. Just one little thing about bar 6. At the end of 6, I'm holding the E down to find my C sharp. I'm not taking all my fingers and putting them across for C sharp. I'm holding the E down and playing 2 and 3 for C sharp, and then I'm moving my first finger across when I need it for B. Let's do the next phrase now. Here we go. So what are we going to look out for here? Well, in the second phrase, in the third bar, we've got a fourth finger on the G. So we can keep 2 notes on the D string and then go up to the open G because we're going up higher onto the A. And we need to watch out for those 2 back bows in bar 14. Let's see if we can apply a bit of pressure, Forqueray pressure, at the beginning of this. Maybe not too much to begin with, otherwise we'll get this, which we don't want. Okay, here we go. So bow on string, heavy arm, sink down, 2, 3. How did you get on? Should we do it again? Just think about that. The second finger. Okay, second finger on the hair. And 1, 2, 3. I'm going to give you 3 ways now to think about how you apply that second finger, and one of these ways will resonate with you. Excuse the pun, but anyway. So, second finger, you can think about pushing your second finger down towards the floor. That's the first way. The next way is to think about turning your wrist anti-clockwise. And as you turn your wrist, so the second finger is a reflex action to the bow hair, and you can see very slightly that the hair is moving. So that's a wrist rotation. And the third way is thinking of it coming back here from the elbow. And the 2 bones in the forearm are just starting to cross. So whether you think of it from the elbow, from the wrist, or from the finger, it doesn't really matter, but one of those ways will work. Okay, let's look at bar 17 now. This is the third phrase. Okay, here we go. And 1, 2, 3. So the really hard note in this is in bar 20, where we've got a push bow on that crotchet, because we don't want to do a lot of bow on that. It's very easy to do this. We want to do this. So can you hear how that third beat then is nice and gentle? It's weak, isn't it? Okay, so how much were you thinking about this, or how much were you thinking about that? So when you practice this, maybe do each phrase, a couple of times. Think, right, left hand, right hand. What have I achieved? What have I improved upon? Okay, let's go to the next one now, which is in 24, 25. bow on the string. Okay, here we go. Didn't mean that to move. 1, 2, 3. Let's just look at this phrase again, shall we? Because we've got bar 28, we've got a minim, dotted minim on a push bow, which is going to leave us quite a long way down here, isn't it? So we've got to work back, but not too far back, because we've got 2 consecutive back bows. Let's try this together. Okay, so this is mezzo forte. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Did you manage to work back? So let's look at that phrase at the bottom of the page on bar 33 now, where we've got mezzo piano on most of this phrase, but it'd be really good if as the music got higher, so maybe you got slightly louder, and as it got lower, then you got slightly quieter. And if you could phrase off on that last D on that top of the line there, that would be great. Okay, so put the bow on the string. Okay, here we go. 2, 3. And just to point out, we've got a 4th finger, haven't we, at 37. So once you've played the D with a 4 and then a C, hold the C until you've played the E, because then we're fingering again for thirds, until you need the F. So that's a good phrase to practice, isn't it? Over and over again until you feel really happy with the notes in the left hand. And then you can start to add some expression. Let's go on. So this is 41. Okay, here we go. So bow on the string and sink down. So a bit louder this time. 2, 3. So did you remember to support the bow with the tip of the 3rd finger on the consecutive back bows? Let's just try that again. Here we go. 2, 3. It makes such a difference to the resonance of the viol, doesn't it, when you can do that? Okay, let's look at the next phrase, but I want to point out what you do in the bars where you have the rests. So 49, 50, 51, if we go from 51 on a back bow, I'll show you what I mean first of all, except it's a push bow, whoops, so 51 on a push, so, and then in the rest I'm rocking round, and then the same thing when I get to the B flat as well on the G string. So I'll just show you that again. So if I've gone from the C, and then in that rest, I'm already on the string I need on the rest before. Move. Let's do that together then. So this is bar 49. Here we go. And 1, 2, 3. And it's leaving the string ringing, isn't it, that we really want to try and do when we leave it in before the rest. So we do this string crossing as an exercise. Let's go from bar 51, and well, that's where we're going to do the string crossing. So from the C in 51, and let's go to the adjacent string, not to the top string. So as we're going to try and leave the C ringing. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. So you land, you play on the C and you land on the D, and you try and leave the C ringing by moving your bow forward quite quickly to get off the string and let this happen. It's not this. Can you see how I stop the note on the string and then move the bow round? It's almost like you're diving off the string and landing on the next one. And I've got a really strong feeling that I've got good contact with my second finger here, because it's enabling me to rock round quietly, silently even, almost silently, because I've got good contact there. Okay, and then if we did it as an exercise and went from the A string to the G string, so 1, 2, 3. So if I try to get my bow onto the G string on the third beat, have a listen. So 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So I've landed before I need the note, haven't I? Okay, so let's do this phrase then. So this is 48. So bow on the string, sink down. This is the last crotchet on a back bow, and it's mezzo piano. And just going to move my bow hold up. And 1, 2. This next phrase involves a B flat on the F string and then holding it down when you play your second finger C. And when we do half position in the next book, it's a really good idea to come back and do this piece and play this phrase in half position, because it's so much nicer to have that B flat on the A string rather than the F string. It's a much nicer note on the A string. Fourth fingers on the fourth string are always a problem. Sometimes we have to play the note because of the context of the notes, but much better to play it always on here on the first fret. So let's look at this last crotchet of 56 then. Here we go, and 1, 2. Finding that tricky, that fourth finger with the B flat and C, then if you look on chapter 1 in this book, there's I think it's page 17, there's a few exercises there to remind you. So when we get to the last note of that phrase in 64, we've got to be careful not to use all the bow, because we've got another back bow, and this might be a phrase when you're thinking, right, this is loud, I'm going to apply some of my second finger Forqueray, my second finger loudness on the hair, obviously on the right place on the bow, and maybe not on the first note, because this could happen. It might be just too much, that additional pressure. So although we're talking about pressure, be careful where you use it. It's a bit like, you know, adding salt and pepper to your food. You don't want to have too much. Okay. So let's do the last note in the phrase before. So this is 64. So 1, 2, 3. So that crescendo at the end at 69 is a lovely place, isn't it, to have a bit more bow and a bit more second finger contact. And then similarly, when I come down, I'm going to be putting my third finger sort of underneath the hair to make it quieter. So you can experiment with the expression in this and really enjoy the range of musicality that you can get from the second finger tensioning the hair, making it louder, and the third finger supporting the hair, making it quieter. Anyway, that's the end of lesson 2, and I'll see you in lesson 3.